So in this episode, we want to look at these two other scholars, friends of ours. We know both of them. One is Robert Spencer, who has been on my show many times. We have done an awful lot of work together. In fact, I unpacked this book with him called The Critical Qur'an that he came out with just a few years back. And if you look up on Fender Films, we did a whole episode. This was done in 2021, 3 years ago. And then Usama Dakdok, who's also another friend, and he came out with a Generous Qur'an. These are two good translations that we recommend to people, but we like to go through them, and Murad's going to show you the differences between his Quran, because people say, well, why do we need another Quran, yet another Quran? And he's going to tell you the difference between his Quran and these two. So over to you, Murad. Help us with this. Give us some insight.
Yeah, Osama and Robert Spencer, they both made a very good translation, but they relied upon the sin, which is the standard Islamic narrative. So they assume that the Quran is talking to Muhammad, and they assume that Al-Tabari, Qurtubi, and the later Mufassirun and the Sunnah is actually talking to Muhammad with the Quran. Now, my translation, it didn't use any of these sources. It used the Quran and only the Quran. I do not assume that the Quran is speaking with Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, and that's the idea. So this, of course, yielded much different results. So if people say, why do we need another translation? I will tell them, because you do not have any translations that's just based on linguistics, just based on the Arabic, without the later Islamic tradition ingrained in it. So it's very different, actually, mine and theirs.
Okay, well, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, now I will share screen to show the people. So what about Osama and Robert Spencer? And before I go into that, I just want to show the people, for example, the Critical Qur'an by Spencer. It says, explained from key Islamic commentaries and contemporary historical research. This is exactly what I did not do. I did not use the key Islamic commentaries at all, because this comes later than the Quran, and I assume that it has nothing to do with the Quran. And Osama Dakdok also, he does the same thing. He uses the Mufassirun, he uses the traditions that came in later after the Quran. Now I want to look at the word jihad, and this is one example that I will see with Robert and Osama. Here, the word jihad, Osama, all over his translation, he says, wage jihad or holy war. But the problem is when you see here the word, it's mentioned with the parents, it says, ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حسنا وإن جاهداك لتشرك بي. It means, and we have entrusted the human by his two parents goodness, that he should be good to them. But if they both, and Osama says, if they both perform jihad against you, so your parents performing jihad against you. But the problem is, this word, of course, has a primitive meaning. Jihad is exerting effort. So in the Arabic, it's actually saying if they both exerted effort against you to the point of exhaustion, where you are actually exhausted, then do not partner anything with me. But as you see, Osama here, because he is very faithful to the sin standard Islamic narrative, then he has the parents as waging jihad against their son, which doesn't really make much sense. Again, here the same thing. وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَى أَن تُشْرِكْ بِي, if they perform jihad against you to partner with me. Of course, the parents, they will not perform jihad against their son. It doesn't make much sense. But Osama, because he just wants to keep the word jihad the way it is, all over his translation, to be faithful to the sin. I like Osama is just the idea that he wants the American audience to know that that jihad in Islam, it means holy war. I like this the idea, but I also want the English speakers to know that this word morphed into holy war from the sin standard Islamic narrative. But just this word on its own, it means exerting effort till you get exhausted. Because this word we use also today in physics. In a physics class, we say juhd, meaning effort. So you will use this word in a mathematical equation and in physics. So this is the primitive meaning for the word. Now, when we move to Robert Spencer, he based his translation on Pixel, and this is in an interview with you, Dr. J. Smith, on Fender Films. He said he based his translation of Pixel, but the problem is Pixel is also based on the sin, Standard Islamic Narrative, which we now know that it poisons everything. If we look at Robert and how he translated the word jihad, he used a different approach when it comes to the parents making jihad against the child. Robert was a little different than Osama. He knew that using the word perform jihad against a child is not gonna sound right. So now he has it as struggle. He says here, if they struggle to make you join with me, that about which you have no knowledge. This is how Robert has it. But struggle in Arabic is mu'anah. But the problem is, if he would have discarded the standard Islamic narrative altogether from the beginning and just look at the word jihad on its own, he would have known that it means performing effort, exerting effort, till the other person is exhausted. So if they exhaust you to make you join, and this fits like a glove, it fits like a perfect puzzle. If your parents exhaust you to the point that you join another deity with me. So Robert here also has it as struggle. So as we know that the sin poisons everything, these two translations, yes, they are very good work. Osama did a phenomenal work because a lot of the English speakers never knew how aggressive the Arabic was. And Robert is very good also with his interpretation that he adds in the translation. So, of course, I applaud the work of these people, but I just want to show the English speakers that my work is very different. It only uses the primitive meaning of the Arabic word and doesn't take into account anything that has to do with Muhammad, which came in later. Now, I want to further explain that words change meaning as time go by. The word gay in English used to mean joyful, carefree, bright, and showy. By the 1960s, the word transitioned from meaning joyful to homosexual. So now if I say someone is gay, this means homosexual only. Osama and Robert, they both use the sin standard Islamic narrative meaning of the Quran. That is why they both use the word wage jihad. Now, how did they reach this conclusion? It's because from the sin standard Islamic narrative. It is as if Osama and Robert, they are both saying that gay never meant anything other than homosexual, which is wrong. In my translation, it's as if I say gay means joyful, carefree, and bright. I restore this older primitive meaning of the word in my translation. Now, unlike my translation, which goes to the most primitive meaning of the Quranic word. So I just have this graph here. The original meaning of the Quran, the primitive meaning of the Arabic word, it will be my translation and my translation only. I didn't find anything else on the market which has the same methodology. But here you will have the Muslim translators, the Sin Standard Islamic rendition of the Quran, and you will have Robert and Osama also here. The only difference is that Robert and Osama, they are genuine people, they are sincere people, they want to get the truth for the people, but this truth is the standard Islamic narrative truth. This is something that has nothing to do with the Quran. It's detached from it. It comes much later, 200 years minimum later than the Quran, and has nothing to do with the Quran. So this is it, and I will get back to you. And now I will move to show people a list of words that are not actually in my Quran translation. Now, when you put the sin aside, standard Islamic narrative, you will get a totally new understanding of the Quran. revelation, book, people of the book, sent down, unseen, disbelievers, infidels, battle of Badr, Yathrib, wife, husband, pair, everlasting, abrogation, hell, hellfire, missiles, forbidden, trial, test, good news, crucify, I seek refuge, lawful, unlawful, sedition, private parts, terror, booty, spoils of war, fight. These words are not in my translation, and much more words than this are not in my translation because these words come from the Standard Islamic Narrative. It is not the basic linguistic Arabic.
Okay, looking at these words right here, I mean, I can almost see that there is an agenda by introducing these words. People of the book, uh, Battle of Badr, because they're Yathrib, the whole thing with abrogation, missiles. Every one of these you could unpack and say there is a reason why they've been introduced because they're not. They're in the Islamic traditions in the standard Islamic narrative. Therefore, they've got to impose them onto the Quran so that they have a authority for in the Quran. What if you find it in the Quran, that gives them authority later on. Fascinating, because if that is the case, then you can see that so much of these words that are introduced have an agenda. There is an agenda. This is a narrative that they're trying to impose on not only the Quran, on us as well. Fascinating. You could probably do a whole series just on unpacking why this word is here and it's not in the Arabic, why this word has been imposed here and it's not in the Arabic. So good stuff. I'm glad you haven't put these words in because they don't belong.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just a handful of words. There are other things that are not in my translation. I am sure that people will be shocked as they read through it. So now we will move to the original question which I asked in the very beginning of this series. Do we need another Quran translation? My answer is if you are okay with all the previous Quran translation scandals, then you do not need another translation. But if you will have the wise decision, then the link is in the description box. Download my free sample so that you be on my email list. I will email you the link for purchase of my translation once it's out. Don't worry, it's not going to be expensive, but just reserve your spot now so that you'd be the very first one to get it. The people on my email list, they will get it much quicker than people on YouTube. They will get it later. So that's all I have for now. And back to you, Dr. J. Smith.
Well, Murad, thank you so much. This has been excellent. I've enjoyed this series. You brought some real surprises, ones I was not expecting. To be fair, when we were introducing and when we were getting into this, I wasn't sure just how important this was. But the more that we got into it, the further we went in it, the more to pick of the words that you brought up and the mistranslations. And when you started seeing the agenda behind it, and many of these were imposed because of a theological difficulty, a theological problem, or a sanitizing of the text. As we got into so many of these examples, especially in the 30s, the last 10 or 11, you've done a great favor for us. Do we need another translation? Yes, we do. And this is why it's good that you have done that. You see the URL right down here. Make sure you do get a sample, and then you'll be on the list so that when Murad does come out with his book in a complete form with the Quran, out without any of those imposed words or those imposed theologies or those imposed ideas that come from the standard Islamic narrative. Once you get it back to its original text, then you can really start having good discussions, good debates with your Muslim friends or those Muslims who are watching amongst yourself. Thank you so much, Murad. This has been great. You've done us a great favor. We'll have you back again, and I'm sure there's going to be some comments that you'll want to respond to. But until we see you again, until Murad is able to come up with another great breakthrough, do enjoy these episodes and do enjoy what he's come up with and wait in anticipation for when the Quran, in his translation of the Quran, comes to the market. Last words to you.
Thank you very much for hosting this show, Dr. J. And I keep reading the comments, and maybe in the future I could just gather these comments and respond to them because I see a lot of people are very angry in the comment section. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you very much for having me once again.
Thank you, Murad. God bless you. This is Saint Murad over there in the Middle East and Jay here on the East Coast, United States. Over and out.